live. Please refresh your pages again. We are live. Please refresh your pages. And could everyone in the chat just do me a huge favor and let us know when you can see us and hear us? Again, just please do me this huge favor and let me know when you can see us and hear us. Now, I actually ask this because I had a really bad experience once upon a time. So it was one of my first ever webinars, Jillian and Jordan, and I was really young. It was like one of my first ever webinars at Teachable, and I joined Teachable like 5 years ago. And I was so excited, and then after 10 minutes in the webinar, I was like, it went back into the chat, and I had been sharing the wrong screen like the entire time.
Oh, no.
So now I always ask at the beginning, and it looks like everyone can see and hear.
Awesome.
And one thing that I'm seeing is that I asked in the chat for people to type in where in the world they're joining us from, and you have a ton of geographic diversity. So people are tuning in from all over. And by the way, please do that if you haven't yet. Let us know where you're joining us from. So we've got folks from, we've got Oregon, Missouri, North Carolina, Massachusetts, Washington, Nebraska, Florida, 2 folks from India where it's really late or very early in the morning, so thank you. Oregon, Texas, Mississippi, Canada, California, New York, Long Island, Netherlands, Arkansas, Arizona, Georgia, Norfolk, UK, Netherlands, Michigan. So yeah, so folks from all over. So for me here in New York, it's 2 p.m. And before I turn it over to you guys, there's just a few quick things I need to tell everyone watching this, just logistically, so that you can get the best experience watching this today. So I'm just going to very quickly share my screen with everyone. Now, you're going to be watching this webinar. You're going to be looking at a page that looks a lot like this. Now, when it's time, for you to, watch the webinar and you're thinking, hey, this is a little bit blurry, it's hard to read anything, just make sure you're watching in high quality. So click the settings gear on the lower right and make sure you're watching in the highest quality possible. 720 is the highest quality. And if you're seeing anything be a little bit small, just hit the full screen button, also on the lower right, to make it full screen. Just do note that when you do that, you won't be able to see the chat, so you'll have to exit full screen in order to see the chat again. And please ask all of your questions during the webinar. I'm going to be writing them down for our hosts to answer at the end. But I do have one quick request. There's no such thing as a bad question, except for this question. There will be a replay. There will be a replay. So please don't ask if there's going to be a replay, because there will be. And in the chat, I would like your help. So if you see someone say, like, is there going to be a replay, or will we get a replay? Could you just let them know in the chat? Yes, there will be. I could really use your help from everyone in the chat. Now, without further ado, I'd love to turn it over to Jillian and Jordan from Loveleigh Loops. I can't wait to see what they have in store for us today.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having us. We're really excited to be here today. Love seeing all of our lovelies in the chat, tuning in from all over the place. Thank you guys so much for showing up today. And if you're watching the replay, hello, welcome. So we are Jillian and Jordan. We're the faces behind Loveleigh Loops, and we are from Ohio. Today we're going to be talking about calligraphy, and that is what we do. We help current and aspiring calligraphy and lettering artists to master the basics, find their style, and just to create art that they're really proud of. Yes, so we have a lot planned for today. We're really excited. So as we're getting started, we're going to be kind of sharing our screen and then also doing a demo on paper. So if you don't need any fancy supplies. We're going to do a little activity later on, but grab a notepad and a pen or pencil, because you may want to take notes. Also, we'll have a fun activity that you can do with us. Yep. So we're going to share our screen. You'll be able to see our slides that we have here. Yep. So the first thing we just kind of want to ask is, what do you think of just like when you first hear the word calligraphy? So you can kind of think to yourself, like, what associations do you have with it? I know a lot of people here probably have experience with calligraphy, but there's also some people who are brand new beginners to this. So we're going to go over some of the sort of most common things people think of. But before we do that, just to give you a taste of what we're talking about today. So by the end of today's workshop, you will know what calligraphy is if you don't already. We're going to talk about some practical uses for calligraphy in everyday life. We'll do an activity showing you how to write your name in calligraphy. I promise you can do it if you follow along. The number one thing that beginners skip when they're trying to learn, and then also the best way to learn calligraphy at home. All right, so going back to the question, what do you think of when you hear the word calligraphy. So lots of associations. So do you want to kind of talk through these?
Yeah, so something that a lot of people think of is the old-fashioned, kind of like the Declaration of Independence style old school calligraphy that you might do with a feather pen and ink. Lots of people also, it brings up imagery of cursive and learning penmanship in school. You might also think of weddings. There's lots of uses for calligraphy in wedding, invitations and decor. And then finally, just home decor and making things pretty around your house. So the kind of like general definition of calligraphy is beautiful writing, and everything that you saw on the previous page is an example of that, of just beautiful handwriting.
Yeah, and it's like more specifically the art of beautiful writing. So if you do have really good penmanship, calligraphy is a little bit different because the intent of calligraphy is to create something of value, to create some artwork. So on the screen here, you can hopefully see a quick, this is a very sped up video. I want you to know that we write very slowly compared to what you're seeing on screen here. So let's talk about quickly some like the origin and some of the differences between traditional and modern calligraphy, because modern calligraphy is mostly what we're focusing on today.
But we do want to take a look at traditional calligraphy because it's very important, especially in the historical context. So historically, in traditional calligraphy, you would use a tool that you had available to you, such as a feather quill or a steel nib. Back in the day, you didn't have things like brush pens or sparkly gel pens to use. So usually you had like a dark black or walnut colored ink. You also would usually use or learn a specific hand, which you can think of as like the font, even though it is not a font, but some examples are copperplate and Spencerian, and those follow specific rules that you learn. And usually it has more of like an elegant feel to it.
Then we have modern calligraphy. So modern calligraphy is based on rules. In this example, we base modern calligraphy off of a copperplate script, but the thing about modern calligraphy is there's a lot of freedom to break the rules once you learn them. So some characteristics of modern calligraphy, you can see right here we have, usually it's not quite as slanted, leaning over as a more traditional script, lots of loops and kind of freedom in the letter forms. In this example, we have sort of a bouncy baseline, and then oftentimes modern calligraphy is, you can use like bright colors because of the modern tools that are available, but you can of course do it in any color you'd like. And modern calligraphy is everywhere. So if you've ever walked through Target or Hobby Lobby or a craft show in your area, you've probably seen examples of modern calligraphy. These are from Hobby Lobby, but it's just so funny walking through these stores and seeing all of these examples. So let's talk about some practical uses for calligraphy, and feel free to chime in the comments if there's a way that you use calligraphy in your everyday life. We would love to hear about it, but here are some of the ways that we enjoy using calligraphy.
So probably the most common way that we use it in our daily lives is writing cards and envelopes. I don't think I've bought a greeting card since in the last 5 years, because I can always just make one on demand, make it personalized, and it's so much special when it's handmade.
Yeah, it's so nice to not have to like run to the store at the last second.
Yeah.
Plus, when you make an envelope that goes along with it, like people always tell us that they always know when they get something from us in the mail. They even like hang the envelope on their refrigerator and keep that part of it. So that's really special too. Handmade gifts is fun. So this, if you know someone who has like a favorite quote, or maybe they're getting married and you want to make a gift that has their names on it, it's really special to create something personal and handmade.
You can also just beautify your space. You can use calligraphy to write labels on your flower container, or make special notes for your kids on their lunchbox, even just home decor to hang up around your house.
So event customization, this was actually how we got back into calligraphy. So we didn't really share too much of our story. We took our first calligraphy class when we were 11 years old. And then we always loved calligraphy and hand lettering. And then about 5 years ago is when we got back into it, when we got engaged a little over 5 years ago. And so we got back into it to do our own wedding calligraphy. So whether you have a wedding or like a baby shower coming up, you can use calligraphy to create something custom and also save money, or even make money if you decide to sell your services.
And journaling is another way that a lot of our students use calligraphy. Just another way when you're writing notes, maybe if you're a student, you can beautify your notes at school or in your journal. And then relaxation, and maybe you come home from a stressful day at work and you just need something to take your mind off of it, to de-stress. It's very therapeutic and meditative.
Yeah, so kind of pulling all that together, it's also good for you. So like if you just need any other excuse, the American Public Health Association has related creative and artistic engagement such as calligraphy to not only improve physiological conditions, but also improved psychological conditions. So basically it's good for your mind and your body.
Yes. Okay, so you might at this point be thinking, oh, that sounds really cool. I really want to learn calligraphy, but you need to have pretty handwriting.
All right, that is a big myth. So I bet if you were to ask any calligrapher you know if they have beautiful handwriting, probably 90% of them would say no, or at least like nothing that looks like their calligraphy. So you definitely don't need to have pretty handwriting to do calligraphy. In fact, one of our students, Rachel from our online course, Brush Lettering Bootcamp, said she has terrible handwriting. So she thought calligraphy was something she'd never be able to do. But you can see on the right-hand side there, that's her after piece from taking our course. You can see that looks beautiful. You would never guess that she has terrible handwriting.
Another one of our students had a similar concern. She thought that her handwriting wasn't that great, but after learning how to do calligraphy, in just 6 weeks, she made a huge transformation in what her calligraphy looks like. So another myth is that you need to be artistic. You might be thinking, I want to learn calligraphy, but I'm not artistic.
I'm not creative, yeah. So that is also a myth. You really do not, like we don't even consider ourselves really to be that artistic. Those of you who know us know that we take a very analytical approach to teaching. So Heather, one of our students, said that she never thought she had the artistic or creative abilities to tackle. But really when you look at it, calligraphy is very much a science as much as it is an art. And then, yeah, Lisa, another one of our students, said that she likes how we teach in an organized, structured way. So if you feel like you're the type of person who can't do anything artistic, well, hopefully today's activity will prove you wrong.
And finally, another thing you might be wondering is you need fancy supplies to get started. And that is a myth. So there are lots of tools that you can use for different types of calligraphy. There's brush pens, there's pointed pen in the bottom left, which you saw before in the traditional style. The top right is broad edge. And then you can also do digital lettering on your iPad.
Yeah, shout out in the comments if any of you guys are here from our iPad group. So while you could go and buy all these fancy supplies, you could get every pen in every color, you really don't need anything super fancy to get started with. So we're gonna do that right now, so make sure you grab a pen and paper. And before we get started with this activity, I just want to go over a couple of things to show you what we're going to be doing before we actually do it. So I'm going to be writing the word teach. You can write the word teach, or you can write your own name. I promise you can do this. So before we get started, I have a couple tips for you. First of all, as we're doing this activity, try to write your name really slowly and really neatly. So actually, let's look at the next tip. So tip number 1 is to slant your letters a little bit. So as we're going to do this activity, you might find that in your normal handwriting, your letters are very upright, like 90 degrees to the baseline. The baseline is the line that your letters rest on. So as we're doing this, try to slant them a little bit so they're almost leaning over. Okay, another tip that's going to just help out as we're thinking about this is to connect your letters together. So in calligraphy scripts, you'll notice that the letters are connected. Similar to cursive, there are lots of differences, which we don't have too much time to go into. And then tip number 3 is to leave a little bit of breathing room. So if you normally write really like scrunched together, try to just leave a little bit of breathing room. And then I kind of mentioned this, go slowly and be neat. All right, so I am going to go ahead and switch to showing you guys this activity. So go ahead and grab your pen and paper. And let me know if you can see this. I'm gonna check the chat too. Okay. All right, you guys. So hopefully you can see the word hello here. So for this activity, you can use any pen and paper that you have. It will help if you have lines on your paper. I'll talk later about what paper I'm using. If you don't have lines, it can be helpful to take a ruler and a pencil and just draw a quick, just some quick terminology. A baseline is the line that your letters rest on. So this would be our baseline. And then the lines that your lowercase letters go up to right here. This is the waistline, the header line. Also, the space is known as the X height. So baseline and X height. So if you don't have lined paper already, then you could draw a quick line for yourself here. All right, so the first step that we're going to do is write out your name or your word.
and using those tips I mentioned. Okay, so I'm gonna write the word teach, and we're just gonna write this very slowly and neatly. You wanna write like fairly big, but if you're using a really skinny pen, then don't make it huge. Okay, so I'm just very slowly, very carefully writing these letters in the word teach, and I'm connecting them together. Yeah. Connecting these letters together. If you guys already have experience with calligraphy, you can make your letters whatever letter form style you'd like. Okay, so this is the base of the word. Now in calligraphy, if you notice in the example for the word hello right above this, you can see these two look very different. And the main difference is that in the word hello, we have a contrast between thick strokes and thin strokes. So like this part of the L right here is much thicker than this part. And by the way, if you are left-handed, I know that's another myth we didn't really talk about, that some people think lefties can't do calligraphy, but you absolutely can. As long as you can neatly write your name, then you should be able to follow along with the whatever regular pen or pencil you are using. So the rules will still be the same whether you are right-handed or left-handed. Yes. Okay, so like I was saying, the difference between here and here is that the word hello has some thickness in some spots, and in teach, in your name, all of the strokes are the same thickness. They're all very thin. So we need to add thickness to our letters to make it look like calligraphy. So the question then is, where do we add the thickness? And the answer is on the downstrokes. Okay, so watch up here on the screen for a second before we add this to your piece. So anywhere that your pen is coming in the downward direction towards you, that's a downstroke. I'm just going to draw a small arrow here. So this is a downstroke. And then once it hits this baseline point, it changes direction and starts going upward. So that's an upstroke. So we need to add thickness anywhere on your letters that there is a downstroke. Okay, so to show you what I mean, let's start with the letter T. This is a downstroke. So what I'm going to do is draw a line that's a little bit further away from the line I had originally drawn there for my letter. Make sure you guys can see this okay. And I'm going to try to keep it parallel there. And then I'm going to color it in. So if you have like a really skinny pen, this part might take a little bit of time to color it in. You could always leave it open for now. Okay, so there we have some thickness on this letter. You can kind of see it looks like this part of the H. All right, so the crossbar of the T is horizontal, so that's not a downstroke, so we're going to skip that. Now let's move to the E. So what you can do is hover over the letter to figure out where the downstroke is. So as I started this E, this part's going up, and right here it starts to go in the downward direction. So I'm going to add some thickness right here as well. And I'm just keeping it parallel to the edge of the stroke I already have. And I'm trying to keep it even. So the same thickness as I have here. All right, and then because right here it hits the baseline and then the stroke starts going back up, we're going to leave this as is. Okay, so taking a look at the A. So we have an oval. Now you should have drawn your oval, hopefully. If you have an oval in your name, you probably draw it, what is that, counterclockwise. That's how most people make their O's. So this part is the part that's coming down and this part is coming up. So on the downstroke, we're going to add some thickness, fill it in. So you don't want to change the overall width of your letter too much. If you're wondering like exactly where to add the shading on the strokes, usually it's on the inside of the letter shape. So for the oval, you can add it on the inside, and then the next part of the oval, of the A is like a U shape, and so you're adding the shading on the inside of the U shape. So just to sort of illustrate that over here, if this is our oval, this is the overall width of it. So instead of adding the shade on the outside and making it wider overall, we're adding the shade on the inside so that it doesn't increase the width overall. Another important point is that you want to stop the shading right where it hits the baseline. Okay, so remember the baseline is this imaginary line that your letters are resting on. So we want to stop the shading right there. We don't want to do this where you start shading and then continue down like that. That's going to make your letters look really unbalanced and bottom heavy. So try to keep your shading more like that. All right, so then for the C, again, I'm hovering over to figure out where to add my shade. So here it goes up, here it starts going down. So I'm going to add a line there, fill it in. And finally on the H. So now this point we just said about shading on the inside, if you happen to notice a part of your letter that looks like it's too narrow and maybe adding the shade on the outside would make it look better, then you can certainly add it on the outside. Like for this part of the H, instead of adding the shade just on the inside, I'm actually going to add a little bit on the outside and a little bit on the right side like this, so that the overall width of this shade is consistent with the widths of my other shades. How are you guys doing? Let us know in the comments if you are coming up with any questions as we go. And as if you have any questions, let us know, but I'm going to go over a couple more sort of do's and don'ts just to help you out with this. Okay, so we really want the shading to be consistent with each other. So what we wouldn't want is, I'm just going to do this really quickly. So if we had the T, the beginning of this word, we wouldn't want to make our T super thick and the E super thin, where these are very different from each other. Now this is sort of dramatic of a demonstration here, but like see how different these are. So we want to keep these consistent with each other, where all of the thickness of our downstrokes matches each letter. Okay, and then also kind of on this topic, like, okay, so how do we know how thick to make it? It's kind of up to you, but definitely want to have enough contrast. So I'm just going to draw 3 ovals here. So if you were to make your shading like this on this oval number 1, you may not even be able to see a difference there. Do you see that? How it's like hardly any different from the thin stroke. So this I would say is not enough contrast. On the contrary, if you make your thick stroke so thick, then it could end up affecting the legibility of your letters. Also, it might just make it look a little chunky. So you want to find a happy medium. For me, I feel like around maybe like 3 to 4 times the width of my thin strokes ends up being what I usually go for. So you don't have to like get out a ruler, but like if I were to line up 3 thin strokes next to each other like that, so just 1, 2, 3, maybe 4, that's usually the width of my thick strokes. Okay. Were there any questions in the comments?
Yeah, so there are a few letters that are a little more tricky than others. So the A might look pretty simple, but some letters like maybe the letter R and also the letter S tend to be a little bit tricky. So Jillian, do you want to show an example how to make those letters?
Yes. Okay, so the R, I'm just going to, so as I'm doing this, the paper I'm using is called marker paper. It's kind of see-through, and I have some lined paper behind. And actually this lined paper, I can talk about really quick for a second too. You'll notice that it has horizontal lines, but it also has this slant line here that you can kind of see. So whenever I practice or do calligraphy, I always use paper like this. It's called guide sheets, so that I can keep the slant of my letters consistent. It's kind of like what we mentioned at the beginning of not making your letters too upright.
We will talk about specific supply recommendations too.
Yes.
And yeah, if you are having trouble keeping your letters a little bit slanted, it's okay if they're upright, but using a ruler might help. You can draw a baseline like this, and then it might help to have a couple lines along your page that are a little bit slanted. If you want to get your protractor out, usually a good angle for modern calligraphy is around 65 degrees. Traditional calligraphy is usually more slanted, around 55 degrees, but something that's just not completely upright, that will help you remember to keep your letters at a slant.
Yeah, and like she just said, it's totally fine if you prefer a more upright style, but typically something that's more elegant will be more slanted. All right, so the letter R, just in case that's a common letter, so in case it's in your name, the way the R looks in calligraphy starts at the baseline and then curves up with a curve, once you hit the, so this is our X height, so like the letter like E would fit in this space. So once you hit the top of your X height, you can continue along that trajectory going up and then go over to the left and make a small little loop. Yeah. All right, and then once you have that loop, we're going to continue this path. We're gonna go down and to the right like this. So we don't want that to swoop back up. And then at the end, we just have what's called an underturn. I actually made mine a little bit too wide in here. You don't want to make it too wide right there. And then the shading would go right here because this is the downstroke. So in one motion, that would look like this. And what not to do for the R, what we see sometimes is something that looks sort of like this. So we want to avoid something like that.
Maybe show S really quick and then.
Yeah, okay, we're gonna keep moving on, but just quickly, for S, you could do almost just like a regular looking S. Usually it goes below the baseline and sort of loops through itself. So you can then figure out where the shading goes because you figure out where the downstroke is like this. Okay, another alternative would be something that looks like this, kind of starting the same way as your R, and then making this a curve that comes in towards itself and exiting out like this. So we're going to talk soon about how these letters are formed because you may notice these look a little bit different than cursive, and I'm lifting my pen a lot. All right, so let's talk about another option for us. So as we were creating these letters, you may think like, wow, that really takes a long time to have to write each letter, then go back in, add all of my downstrokes. It is very manual, and there's lots of pros to doing faux calligraphy, pros as in like good things. But a quicker way is if you don't want to have to manually add the shading, there's a tool that's called a brush pen. Here's an example. And I'm gonna write the word teach again. And watch on screen as I'm doing this. Oh, that's fine. All right, so if you watch on screen as I'm writing the word teach now, did you see that? As I'm writing, it's giving me my thick and thin strokes. I'm gonna say automatically. So instead of having to go back in and fill in my thick shades, as I use pressure on the pen differently and I manipulate the tip of the pen, it is automatically giving me the look of calligraphy.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? Isn't that so satisfying to watch? And also so much faster. I don't know how much time it took to write the first one, but it probably saved like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It was probably at least twice as fast.
So you can get like a pretty similar look if you use, so what we were doing is called faux calligraphy, which is technically considered handwriting. Handlettering. Handlettering is more when you illustrate the letters or draw them, like draw the outlines, fill them in, whereas calligraphy uses tools like a brush pen where you don't have to go back and add this in manually. It kind of does it for you.
Also, if you are wondering about the R that we talked about before, you can fill in that little loop at the top because it is actually going downward, or you can leave it open as a loop. You can do it either way.
Yes, and that's the great thing about calligraphy is there are so many different ways of writing the letters. Like so I just did the R with a brush pen. You can see that loop is actually, it became a shade. So instead of being an open loop, it is shaded in.
So yeah, so you guys are probably wondering how to learn brush pens, and they're so much fun to use. There's so many different colors you can use. It makes doing calligraphy a lot faster, but there are a lot of struggles that come along with it because this is a flexible tip. So it does take some practice to learn how to control. If you've ever tried one, you might know this, but because it's flexible, you really have to work to master the change in pressure. So by pressing lightly, you get thin strokes, and then when you press down harder, the way that the brush pen works, then you get these thick strokes. But it does take a lot of muscle memory to be able to make the difference and make it consistent and transition between the two.
Mm-hmm. So, and by far the most common struggle that we hear from our students is that transition between the thick and the thin strokes. So like, for example, in an oval, we have a transition here where it goes from thin to thick, thick to thin. That is very difficult to master. But it's also using a brush pen instead of doing faux calligraphy like this can help you with consistency, because you just have to press down the same amount to get the same amount of thickness, versus with faux calligraphy, if I wanted 3 rectangles that were the same width as each other, that might be a little bit more difficult to manually guess, you know? Okay.
And again, if you are left-handed, you can absolutely use brush pens.
Yes, we've had lots of successful students in our in-person and online classes use brush pens if they're left-handed. Okay, I'm gonna switch gears a little bit. I'm gonna write a word, and I want you to sort of watch and notice some things as I'm going. And so I'm just gonna write the word handmade. So one thing you may notice right away is that I'm lifting my pen a lot.
So this is something that makes calligraphy very different than cursive, and also different than just like regular handwriting. So usually with cursive or handwriting, you're trying to write quickly for the purpose of actually writing something down and getting the information across. But with calligraphy, you're going slowly and with more intent. It's more like you're kind of like you're drawing the letters. Jillian's going to talk in a second about how it's actually more like making shapes. And so when you're doing calligraphy, the purpose is to create these beautiful letters, which is why it might look like she's going dramatically slow right now. But
I actually feel like I'm kind of rushing right now just for the purpose of the video, so I don't take too much time. Yeah, normally I would go a little bit slower. And that is a huge, I think, light bulb moment for people, because you see on Instagram, or even like in our presentation, you saw those sped up videos. And so it looks like people write this really fast, but going slowly. So there's a couple of things that contribute to the beauty of calligraphy. Going slowly so that you have precision, and then also consistency. So consistency in your letter heights, which is why the height and the slant, which is why we like to use guide sheets. In the width of your letters. And then also, did anyone notice anything as I was writing these about how I was forming the letters? So we kind of hinted at this at the beginning. So the number one thing that most beginners skip as they're trying to learn calligraphy is that they're thinking about the letters as letters, individual 26 letters of the alphabet, but letters aren't actually letters in calligraphy. They are a series of shapes that are put together to create letters. So let me prove that to you by highlighting a few areas in here. So in the word handmade, you can see one shape that's repeated several times is called an oval. So I'm just gonna sort of go over these in black. So in the A and the D, and this happens to have 2, but this oval is one of our basic shapes. And this oval, every time you write it, should look exactly the same as itself. And it shows up in other letters such as G. And then we even have like a partial oval. Oh yeah, in the E. So that's a partial oval. Okay, and then one other example is a shape. I'm going to draw it down here first. This is called a compound curve. Some of you guys may already be familiar with these. These are called the basic strokes. So this compound curve can be found in this part of the H. This part of the N, and this part of the M. So is anyone like mind blown right now? I know for a lot of people, this is a very key moment when they realize this, because so there are 7 basic strokes. I'm just going to draw them down here. And there are like modifications or variations on these that you will see in letters, kind of like how we already pointed out the partial oval. And we're not going to like, you don't have to memorize these or anything right now. I'm just kind of going to show you what they are. But these are the 7 basic strokes. So we have entrance stroke, underturn, overturn, oval, and then we have ascending stem loop. Did I say that? Yeah, compound curve, ascending stem loop, and descending stem loop.
So can you point out the ascending stem loop?
Yeah, so anyone able to find the ascending stem loop in the word handmade? It is right here. So this is found in letters like H, or actually let's just show some examples down here. So you can use all of these basic strokes to form any letter of the alphabet. Okay. So let's just do a couple quick examples. We already kind of saw the H in handmade, but a handmade is made up of the entrance stroke plus our ascending stem loop plus this compound curve. And again, I'm going really fast here for the purpose of the video, but normally I would recommend writing a lot slower so that you get that precision. Okay, so putting those together and knowing how to put them together gives you the H. So every time you write the H, it should look the same, which is the whole consistency piece that we were talking about. Or like the G, we have entrance stroke, oval, descending stem loop, and then it ends with an entrance stroke, which is actually also called an exit stroke. So that would look something like this: entrance stroke, oval, descending stem loop, and then we finish off with another entrance or exit stroke, okay? Or even something like the letter I is really simple. We have an entrance stroke, and then we have an underturn. This is the underturn. And of course, we have to dot it with a dot at the top. Okay, so that is kind of the basis of learning calligraphy and why we say that you really don't have to be artistic to learn calligraphy. If you can draw these 7 shapes, I'm going to talk just another second about these. If you can draw these 7 shapes, which I bet any of you could do this, and I will go back and point out that you can do these with faux calligraphy too. So for example, this descending stem loop, it's just a matter of going in and drawing that shade in manually, like this. If you can draw these 7 shapes, then you can do calligraphy. And that's also like the beauty of it, is that you don't have to learn all 26 letters separately. You can learn these and get the consistency. And again, you don't have to be artistic to do this. So when you see modern calligraphy, many of you are probably thinking like, well, like this word handmade doesn't look really fun and flowy and bouncy like I normally see in modern calligraphy. Or maybe you think of flourishes. So I'm going to show you how even with a fancy style, it's really helpful to focus on those basics. I'm going to go back to the word teach. So you can feel free to follow along with this or just watch. So I'm going to write the word teach just in a basic style. Actually, let me do it with a lighter color. So this brush pen right here that I'm about to use is called a Tombow dual brush pen. I don't know if you guys can hear it. This one's very squeaky. So as I write with it, you can kind of hear the squeaky sound as it goes down the page. Also, this one's a little bit thicker than the one I was using before. It's a little bit more flexible too. Okay, so when I write the word teach, here I was using the basic strokes. So if I wanted this to look a little bit more modern and do something like adding flourishes or bounce to it, I still start off with the basis of using these strokes, but then I can sort of add to it. So I'm going to use this black to mark up what I'm going to change. And let's start with making it more bouncy. So I'm going to pick a few areas to adjust. And then I'll show you what it ends up looking like. Okay, so this is sort of the process that I do. And at this point, I do this in my mind instead of actually writing it out. Although if I do have like a longer quote or if I'm having trouble winging it, then I do actually write it out with like a pencil first. But this is called bounce lettering. And it's very much a modern calligraphy style. You can see how much more sort of free and flowy this looks compared to the more basic version. But by doing this, I was still focusing on the basics, just adding to it. And then another thing you could do is add some flourishes. Let's change paper here. And we will be talking about supplies next, if you're wondering exactly what supplies we're using. So for something like flourishing, starting off with the same base, I'm just going to write in pencil just to go a little bit quicker for this part, but still starting off with the same base of the word teach. So you guys, if you know us, you know that Jordan is definitely the master of flourishing here. but I'm going to do my best. So what I would do is take the basis of this and then adjust some things to add some flourishes to it. So like maybe this part of the H I would make a little bit fancier. Maybe I would end it with something that looks more like that, so that when you put all of that together, it will look flourished. So this is sort of like modern flourishing, since we're talking about modern calligraphy. But you can definitely get a very elegant look, like if you've seen flourished wedding invitations. Okay, so here I have a lot going on with the H, so I'm going to do my flourish first at the top, and then there we go. That actually turned out pretty good. And let's do maybe a little bit simpler on the T crossbar. All right. I'm kind of curious though, like which of these two versions you like better. And you can actually do a combination of these. Like if you want, you can combine something that's bouncier and something that's more flourished. But here are two ways that you can sort of take your basic calligraphy and add some style to it. So let us know which one you like better, the bouncier one or the flourished one, or maybe you like the regular one, like the more basic one. Okay, so let's talk really quick about supplies, and then we're going to go back to our screen. So for the supplies that we're using, you really only need two things to do. Well, okay, let's talk about faux calligraphy, which is what we were doing at the beginning, and then we'll talk about brush pens, which is what I've been using. So at the beginning, when I was teaching you how to write the word teach and add shading, you can really use any tools that you have. So I will say, if you're using, I'm trying to find like a really skinny pen, like this pen, and you're trying to write at this scale, like if I were to try to make this H using this really skinny pen, this is going to take me forever because I will have to go in. Let's zoom that in a little bit. I would have to go in and color all of this in, which uses up a lot of ink, a lot of time. So if you're using something skinnier like this, then I would probably suggest writing at a much smaller scale, like maybe closer to this. And then maybe even making your thick strokes a little less wide, just if that's all you have. I really like using, this is the Tombow dual brush pen. So on one side, we have the brush tip, which allows you to have the thick and the thin strokes. And then on the other side, it's a bullet tip marker, which only gives you the same thickness no matter how hard you press. So this is a mono weight. So that's what I was using here. I just feel like it flows really well and is a pretty good thickness for this size of faux calligraphy that I was doing. Okay, now, and then the other thing you need is paper. So having lined paper will be really helpful just to keep your letters straight. If you don't have lined paper, you can draw with pencil. Even better would be using something like this. And we do have free guide sheets available on our website that have the lines going down them. We even have some smaller versions as well if you're working with a smaller size. Let's go to brush pens though. So supplies for brush pens, because I know some of you guys were asking in the chat. So for brush pens, you need paper, and we need it to be smooth paper. This is called marker paper. The brand is Canson, but this is marker paper and it's very smooth. It comes in a pad like this. I also like it because it's kind of, as I was showing you before, you can kind of see through it, so you can see guidelines behind. And because of the tip of the pen, what it's made of, it's almost like a sponge kind of texture. And of course, there's different brands of brush pens, but using something like this is very delicate. And now when I first started using brush pens 5 years ago, and I was using them on regular copy paper because I didn't know any better, and they would just fray and get ruined, and it really shortens the lifespan of your brush pens. Plus, they're harder to use when they're all frayed. So using very smooth paper, we like this the best just because you can use it with your either guidelines behind it, or you can even use for composition. So like if you sketch something out and then you want to continue working on it, you can use this paper because you can see through it. So it's really great for that. But you can also use something like HP LaserJet paper, and then you would just need something like a light pad to see the lines through it. And there's also like pads of paper like Rhodia you guys might be familiar with that has dots and lines on it, but our personal preference is this marker paper. And then for supplies, obviously you need a brush pen. So we did say at the beginning, you do not need to spend a fortune on supplies. Now if you're like us and you want every color of every pen, it can get expensive, but really all you need to start out with is, we like to say, start out with a black and maybe 1 or 2 colors. And the brand that we really like using, especially for beginners, is this one. It's called Zig Fudebiori. And we like it because it's a great size. It's not too flexible, so it's not too frustrating at the beginning. And actually, you know what? I'm going to go switch over to my screen now because I have the names of these. Oh, sorry, really quick, before I do that, I did want to show you the difference between small and large tip brush pens just really fast. So here's an example of well, we were using the larger tip ones before, but there's also smaller ones. This is a very popular one. This is called a Tombow Fudenosuke. And you can write at a much smaller scale with these. So if you were doing something like addressing envelopes, we said at the beginning that's one of our favorite ways to use calligraphy is to make envelopes and cards, then this would probably be a more appropriate size for you. And you can see a huge difference here between the sizes. So usually smaller tip brush pens are more firm, which makes them a little bit easier to use because you don't have to know as much about controlling them. So our personal philosophy is that we like to teach starting with larger tip brush pens. It makes it a lot easier to then switch to a smaller tip if you need to, but also because writing bigger, you can kind of like see your mistakes a little bit easier. So you can tell where you're having, like where you need to improve your transitions. And so even though I know people get frustrated at the beginning using larger tip brush pens, we truly believe that that's the best way to learn, and that's how we teach. That's how we teach, well, used to teach in in-person workshops when that was possible, but anyway, so here's sort of a difference between large and small tip brush pens. Also for small tip, there's not really as much of a variety of color as for larger tip brush pens. Like usually for larger tip, you can find them in a million colors, but it seems like smaller tip ones are sort of newer. So anyway, okay, I'm gonna go back to sharing, or Jordan's going to share our screen now. And here is, let me go back to our faces. Yeah. Okay. Switch back to our faces. How are you guys? Are you guys learning anything today? I hope you're enjoying this. I know we're starting to get to the end, but we really want to thank all of you for joining. So there's always so much that we want to cram into these sessions.
Yeah.
We just love teaching, and we love that you guys love learning. So here again is a recap of the supplies that we talked about, the Canson marker paper, and then these were the 2 main large tip brush pens if you want to write these down or screenshot them really quick. So, okay, so let's keep going here. So I know that we talked a lot about like how to do calligraphy and how to write the letters, but just to reiterate, it's so much more than just writing the alphabet. And even though that is a really cool skill to have, and also it's something that you can kind of show off, there's so much more to it. Just remember, you can do things like, it can be a relaxing hobby, you can use it to decorate your home, make personalized gifts and cards, so you can save a lot of money by not having to buy a card every time. And then something we didn't even really talk about is that you can sell your work, because this is a really sought after skill that people are willing to pay for.
We've had lots of our students like go on to make successful businesses out of this and get really cool jobs doing calligraphy for events or selling products. But it's also a great way to explore your artistic and creativity side, even if you feel like you're not a creative person or you feel like you don't have artistic skills. Hopefully you're seeing from today that you don't have to be the most artistic person in the world to do calligraphy. Maybe you surprised yourself today with how your name turned out, or of course, if that was the very first time that you ever tried something like this, do not be discouraged at all if it didn't turn out exactly how you wanted. We've been doing this for a long time, and one thing you could do, actually, something that we did at the beginning was we created an Instagram account to share our art so that we had a place to post it. It's so fun looking back and seeing our old work and seeing how much we've improved.
Yeah, it's also a great way to connect with other people. The calligraphy community on social media is amazing, so encouraging, so positive, and so uplifting. And that was really how we were able to progress so quickly, is just by connecting with other people. And also people, like when we started our Instagram account, I think it was in like 2015 or 2016 maybe, people were really impressed by the work that we were doing. And looking back now, we can see our own improvement, but even back then people were reaching out to us asking like, how did you learn that? Can you teach me? And so we did start teaching. We started teaching workshops back in 2017, and we were so inspired by the progress that we saw so we would teach like a 3-hour in-person workshop, and people that came in were sometimes really nervous, or maybe they had never even picked up any type of calligraphy pen before, but they made so much progress during our workshop. So we paid attention to what kind of questions they were asking, what kind of struggles they were facing. We paid attention to the lefties and like figured out tips to specifically help them. And so yeah, we spent a whole summer teaching dozens of of in-person workshops.
And then we decided to compile all of this knowledge into an online course, put it all in one place. And it's really a combination of all the best things that we taught and learned from teaching our workshops in one place. And we've had tons of students go through it. So we found that really the best way to learn, like a lot of people when they're starting and getting interested, they'll find practice sheets to trace and things. But we found that the best way to learn is having a system of here's what you need to learn in what order. Especially you guys are so busy with so much going on in your life. So knowing exactly what to practice and in what order is really important. So we are really excited about the online course that we've created. We've mentioned it a couple times and shared some of our student successes from it, but it's called Brush Lettering Bootcamp. And it's really everything you need to know about how to use a brush pen to create beautiful calligraphy and lettering. Our students like to call it BLB, so you may have heard that acronym before if you're in our community. And a lot of students come in, they're nervous, like Gina was nervous about not even just learning, but trying to learn it online, because we know how it can be different learning from a screen versus having like an in-person workshop, even though like for an in-person workshop, you can't rewatch it. But anyway, so she was able to have a very amazing transformation. You can see her after picture here on the right-hand side after going through the course.
So let's just really quickly talk about what is actually included with the course. So inside the course, you get access to over 6 hours of video lessons. Again, this would be like attending at least 3 of our workshops. All that information compiled into videos, and it has a workbook that you can use to follow along step-by-step with the video lessons. There's also 17 pages of assignments for you to complete and just make sure you're on the right track. This is really where some of like the biggest value comes from, is doing these assignments to make sure, test your knowledge that you're progressing. We have tons of fun bonus lessons. There's 9 different lessons, including about an hour total of video, 3 additional workbooks and templates. We also have a suggested practice schedule to give you a roadmap of what to follow, as well as progress checks along the way. And then finally, the cherry on top is that you get lifetime access on any device if you sign up for this course.
Yeah, so I know some of you guys are wondering how to sign up. The button to sign up is on this page, but we're just going to quickly go through a couple more things to see like if this is right for you, and then we will have some quick time at the end for some questions. So Claudia was one of our students. She said she came so far in her lettering in such a short time. And we believe that the reason we have so many students transform so quickly is because of the system we put in place, especially having like the homework and the assignments and the progress checks to keep you on track. Also, some of you guys, if you aren't a brand new beginner, we've had a lot of people ask like, can I still take this course? And the answer is definitely yes. There was like the third comment down, Christina said, I'm totally the person who went, oh, that's why my ascending stem loops are smaller than my descending stem loops. So that only means anything to you if you have already done calligraphy, but we have just studied this for so long that we've found all of these nuances that really help people, if they're not a beginner, be able to take it to the next level, or like Christine said, knowing the finer points are so helpful too. So quick overview of what's in the course.
Just to give you an overview, that you will learn everything you need to know, starting with the fundamentals. You'll learn how to write, of course, the alphabet, all the letters, how to write words and fancy alphabet variations. We give you a few different capital styles because I know that's something people love to learn. Of course, you learn punctuation and symbols. There's a whole lesson about lefty specific tips. And then we also have some really fun bonus lessons of things you can do with brush pens. Here's just some screenshots from what you can do. So you can actually make watercolor florals with brush pens. We teach you exactly how to do this. You also get envelope addressing templates, because I know that's a way that people love to start using their calligraphy right away. You get our ribbon lettering workbook, and then also other fun lessons like how to blend.
Yeah, so it's kind of hard to put a value on all of this, but we are just thinking like all of the lessons that you get, like if you were to attend multiple workshops from us, get all of the priceless benefits too. So all of the things that you get inside the course, the total value of it is $450, but today we're offering it to you for $125. It's going to be discounted because we're so thankful that you were able to join today's workshop, and we are also really thankful to Teachable for hosting us today.
Yeah, so just to reiterate that you get tons of value, and because you are here in this workshop, that you will be able to get the discount. So just to show you some more examples of beautiful work that our students have created, then you can see here Heather says, if you're on the fence, you should absolutely go for it. And look how beautiful that piece is that she created. And she went through the course in just about 6 weeks. Usually it takes our students 6 to 8 weeks based on the calendar. And so yeah, I'm so impressed with her work. And Dee says, this course is everything I wanted and more. Brilliant. Yeah, so what else did we want to say about brush lettering bootcamp?
Yeah, so I think we're ready to open up for any questions if you guys have any questions. So I know we have a few minutes left, but if any questions have come through in the chat, if you guys have any questions about the course or even just what we've talked about today with calligraphy and brush pens, we are more than happy to answer it. And once again, thank you all so much for joining us today. We've had a lot of fun talking about one of our favorite topics ever.
So I'm going to go back to our faces here, and then we can chat.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing what's been an incredible workshop so far. The comments have been pouring in. And again, everyone, please just let us know any questions you have in the chat. And what I do want to say is one thing that's really kind of unusual is already in the workshop, we have a lot of people chiming in saying like, oh, we've taken these lessons and they're worth every single penny. Or Amanda says these are like a great value. Laura says as a graduate of this course, it's so fun and so worth it. So there's so much love in the chat there. Well, the one thing I am actually kind of curious about before we get into questions, while and while people type their questions in the chat, can you tell me a little bit about what distinguishes the course from some of the workshops like this and some of the paid from some of the other kind of free resources out there?
Yeah. So a lot of the free resources, so you guys in our community know we give out tons of free content and videos. And I would say the biggest difference is that having an online course and having everything in one place put together in such a way that it's like the roadmap or the path to take from start to finish makes all the difference in the world. So you can find, like, especially if you're new and you don't really know where to start, like you probably would have skipped our whole entire first module that is about learning how to control your brush pen transitions. So really
some of the students say that that's like the most helpful thing that has made the biggest difference in their work. And it's more than just like kind of blindly tracing practice sheets. You really get to learn the details. So if you are someone that is very like analytical and logical and likes those little details, that's what really sets this course apart.
Nice. So we had a couple questions here. Pat says, tell me about the ruler that you were using. Like the ruler was really exciting for folks.
Oh, well, this ruler, actually, you know more about this ruler than me. It's fun because it like rolls, so you can make parallel lines really easily because it just like you put it somewhere and then you roll it down.
Yeah, so you can use this to make your own guidelines if you don't have a printer to print the guide sheets or something. There's also other types of calligraphy rulers that are specific to different scripts that have like an angle on it that you can use for those slanted guidelines, but it just makes drawing parallel lines a lot easier.
Yeah.
So Deb says, how long is the $125 price available to us?
How long is this available? It's a limited time and you guys can get it at the button on the page. So normally the course is priced at $150. It's $125.
Oh, it says it's a A week for a week.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
one more week to get this discount. But of course, you do get lifetime access. So if you can't start tomorrow, you can always start it whenever you have the free time.
Nice. So we're getting some requests in the chat for what is the actual brand of the ruler.
We can, I'll have Jordan.
People love this ruler, I've got to say.
So the brand is Accurit, Acurit. We can like try to find the actual link to it. I don't know if you can see that. It's probably too hard to see. Accurit. Also, I just saw a comment. Yes, I don't think we said this. We are twin sisters. Oh yes, we are twins.
So one thing, so we're seeing more testimonials in the chat. Amanda says, the way Jillian and Jordan break it down so technically that it makes such a difference. They help you understand exactly how each letter is formed, which makes the basics so helpful. And for those folks watching on the replay, like the energy in the chat with the comments like this has been pretty great.
Oh, thank you guys so much.
Thanks, Amanda.
Yeah, we love like seeing all you guys. We haven't been looking at the chat too much, but we love seeing you guys in the comments here. It means so much to us that you guys showed up for us.
So we have been seeing some requests for additional letter demonstrations. Is that something that you're open to doing? Do you still have the camera set up, or?
Yeah, for sure.
I think the one that I've seen a lot, I think Brianna has been very incredibly persistent with it, is a capital B. I suspect that Brianna might want to, but I don't want to assume it's because it's her name.
All right, let me switch over here. Okay, capital B. So there's lots of things. So what we talked about today was the basic strokes, which mainly are for the lowercase letters. So there's lots of ways to do capital letters. I'll show you a couple of modern ways, and then Jordan can show you a more fancy alternative. So the main thing to keep in mind when you're doing any letter is just, let's see, I just want to make sure you guys can see this okay, is to make sure that your downstrokes are thick and your upstrokes are thin. So here's sort of like a kind of basic B. And you could add things to it, like to the stem. You could start with the same base and then add an entrance like this, or you can even make it a little bit more. You could do it the other way. Let's have Jordan do like a fancier version. Yeah, it's fine. Okay. So this that she's doing is based on copperplate, which if you guys remember from the beginning, we were talking about how there's different styles and hands of calligraphy. So that's copperplate, and then one more, I'm guessing she's going to do Spencerian. Yeah. Yep, so Spencerian, this is a very fancy looking, especially the majuscules or the capital letters. So hopefully that gives you some ideas. Were there any other letter requests?
Ooh, yeah, actually, if anyone has, Tess has one. What are your kind of techniques for doubles? So like balloons or Tess?
Oh, that's a good question. So I'll talk about this. So one strategy is to purposely make the double letters look different, especially if you are doing a more modern style. So I'm going to write the word balloon, and I like to add some bounce into it. So for this L, I'm going to make it come down below the baseline. And this L, I'm going to make even taller. And then the O's, I'm also going to, wait, how do you spell balloon? Yeah, B-O-O. But always the hardest part is that like you're concentrating so much on what the letters look like that you forget how to spell. So for something more modern, you could purposely make them look a little bit different. So you can see some differences in the heights of these, or like the heights of the L's and how low they go down. But if you do want them to look exactly the same, then practicing them next to each other and like taking a look at and seeing like, okay, what was different between these two? These are pretty good, but if you notice like the shading was a little bit different. Jordan, do you have any other things to chime in? I mean, when you're doing double letters, it's really just like, if you are doing a style that is more of just like the basic strokes and being consistent, then anywhere that you have a letter, it should look the same as itself in every instance. Of course, it's not going to look like exactly the same because you're not a computer, but consistency is your goal.
Yeah. So I wanted to we have two more questions here about the course, and I don't want to, we had one who was asking about, if you sign up for the course, how do you actually get feedback on your progress? And Jeanette has a related question, which is, if you're going to get a certificate at the end of the course.
Oh, that's a good question. So we'll start with the second question. We do have certificates. So if you complete the course, I'm going to go back to our faces. Okay, so for any of our courses through Teachable, if you complete the course, if you complete all of the lectures, then you will get a certificate of completion. I do want to point out, though, even if you do complete a lesson, you can always go back and rewatch it. They're not like gone forever after you complete the course. And then as far as feedback, so we used to offer coaching sessions where we would have like a certain 8-week period and you could sign up to get our individualized coaching. So something that I think most of you guys in the chat probably know is that we are both expecting babies. We're both pregnant and due at the end of this year. So we don't have plans for specific brush lettering bootcamp coaching, which would be an add-on anyway. But we're always available. If you do sign up for any of our courses, you're always welcome to send us an email. Yeah. If you do have specific questions, or if you are getting stuck, or if you just really need help with something. Yes, we will never leave you hanging. Yes. Yeah, you can always send us an email and we can help you out.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank
you. So I think we'll do like one or two more questions before we wrap this up. So I think we might do one more letter demonstration. Okay. And then one more question, I think might be how we break this down. So we have a request here for capital I's in short words. So if or it. So CMOB says that they have trouble like using a capital I for that type of situation where it's a short word.
That's a great question. I'll show you a more modern option, and then Jordan will show you something fancier. So really legibility is going to be the key. You want to make sure that someone can read what you're writing. So you could do something as simple as just a straight line down. You could have a curve on the top. You want to make sure that like in this instance that it doesn't end up looking like an H. So again, legibility is very important. You could do, let's see, how do I normally make eyes? Yeah, you can do something like this. If Jordan will show you something more fancy, but also want to point out that you don't always have to connect. You can kind of see in the example I wrote Tess over here is that you don't have to connect your lowercase letters to the capital letters. So in some cases you could, like B to R would be an example where you could connect the capital to the next lowercase. But for something like I, you can see that we're leaving space between the I and the second letter, and you could have an entrance stroke to your second letter, like Jordan just did an entrance stroke for the T, or you could leave off the entrance stroke like I did here.
It's so satisfying seeing
Isn't it? So, a lot of people say that like when they watch our YouTube videos or even our courses, it's just like so relaxing to watch and so satisfying to watch, even if you're not even the one doing it.
Yeah, I wonder if there's like a small ASMR contingent here.
I think, yeah.
Now you just need to get like microphones really close to the paper so you can like hear the scratching of the pen or something.
I know, we need like a really high quality mic.
So we had the one last question where we had something coming in here. So I think this was questions about the materials in the course. Like, are there downloadables? Like, are there things you're downloading, or is it all like on the screen? Like, or is there stuff that you're able to like print out for practicing? Like, how does it work in terms of the materials in the course?
Yeah, so all of the videos you would watch on the screen while you're doing it on your paper, and then you can print off the workbook. So the workbook, it's about 70 pages of like workbook practice pages, and then the 17 assignment pages are in that workbook as well. So all of these pages you can print off. So it's a PDF file, and yeah, like she said, you can print it, and you can either print it on like smooth paper, or you could print it and then use something like marker paper on top. Yeah, so there's areas for you to trace what we have, and then there's like diagrams and notes and things, and then there's space for you to practice.
Okay. So while I actually would like folks in the chat to do one more thing, which is, could everyone in the chat just say thank you to our hosts for having us today. Thank you to Jillian and Jordan for sharing so much knowledge with us. I've learned a lot. I mean, I came into this like not really knowing that much about calligraphy, and now I'm tempted to like use my Teachable education stipend to get the course. It's a nice part of working at Teachable is that, you know, we have that education stipend. So if everyone could just say thank you, that would mean a lot. And while folks say that, do you have any, Jillian, Jordan, do you have any last messages, or, you know, where folks should be looking you up or should find you after, anything like that?
Yeah, you can talk about where they can find us, but I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you for having us to share our workshop with everyone. We had a blast. Thank you everyone for joining. And my advice would be, like we've been saying, don't feel afraid or nervous or discouraged, whether or not you sign up for the course or even decide to continue learning calligraphy. Whatever it is that you decide to learn, something artistic, even if you don't feel like you're the most artistic person in the room, learning something artistic or creative is so good for you in so many ways. And we both believe in you. So I really encourage you to pursue that.
Yeah,
No.
yeah, I echo everything she said. She probably read my mind. And then the best place to find us would be, so our website is lovelyloops.com. You can also find us on YouTube. We love posting tutorials there, and then Instagram and Facebook as well. So our name is Lovely Loops. The Lee comes from her middle name is Lee.
Yeah, and one more thing about that, if you guys followed along with today, we would love to see if you wrote your name or if you wrote the word peach like we did. If you're in our Facebook group, or if not, you should join. Share it with us so we can see, because we would love to see.
Or tag us on Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram too.
All right. Thank you so much, Jillian, Jordan, and thank you to our audience. Hope to see you all on the other side inside the course. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.